All right, LinkedIn, Justin Minot here coming to you. Hope you're all well. I'm going to bring out my guest, Kevin Robinson. Kevin, good to have you here.
Great to be here, Justin. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. I'm so glad you're here. So y'all are in for a real big treat today. Kevin is the president and chief technology officer of our Triad Enterprises, doing really beautiful work around equity and tech and helping people really navigate this space. Really thankful for the work that you're doing and excited about this conversation.
Hey, appreciate you guys making us visible. Thank you, Justin.
Hey, got to put each other on. That's what this is all about, right?
Yes,
So,
sir.
Kevin, you have an incredible story, an incredible journey of what has led you to this very moment. I'd love to hear the backstory, right? Because now you're at a place where you're giving back, you're doing a lot of this community work, you're doing a lot of, trainings and all these types of things. But what was your story like breaking into tech? Break that down for us.
Yeah, so, going back, I went to engineering school in 1978 in Boston University,
Mm-hmm.
left school early, started a family, and really started looking at what else could I do. I was climbing poles for the phone company. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Saw that the guys that were really getting paid, they had 20, 30 years in, and I wasn't going to get ahead of them in the line. So I said, well,
Right.
what else can I do? And so I looked at, I actually stormed the employment office of IBM and, suited up and made a great impression, was able to get a job there. But it took some confidence to do that. And I'm going to circle back to confidence later in our conversation.
Yeah.
Really important. But I told my story. I impressed some people. They gave me an opportunity. And so I started in the tape library, but that was 40 years ago. So now
Wow.
when I look back and I say, hey, these people invested in me. They gave me a great start to my career. I rode that out for another 40 years, ended my career with Microsoft. In 2017, I retired from Microsoft to start this company. But the major takeaway from that story is, you're only limited by what your mind says you're absolutely limited to. So I got
Yes.
a lot of opportunity, got a lot of mentoring and coaching late in my career. Uh,
Mm.
and I saw that as a key differentiator for young people entering their career, that if they had the right guidance early on and they were able to close a lot of the gaps in their particular skill sets and be directed to opportunities, that would make a huge difference. So mentoring and coaching is another cornerstone of what we're trying to do with people in their careers. So
I
we created
love that.
the world's first learning and career development community. Learning because continuous learning is at the center of this. I mean, I did not complete my degree, but I tell people all the time I completed probably 8 or 10 degrees. And
Right, by the time you were done.
yeah, yeah. So because I'm always learning, and so
Mm.
you just have to learn how to apply yourself and apply that learning and really make your mark.
Yes. I want to go back to, you said you stormed IBM and went and convinced them to hire you. Walk us through that process practically, because I think there are a lot of people right now who are saying, okay, I want to muster up the confidence to go and maybe go a new direction. Maybe they haven't been in tech before, but they know they want to break into the tech industry, or maybe they have been in tech but are really just trying to get that next step and move forward. What did that look like practically for you?
Yeah, so you have to know what your superpowers are, what your skill set
Mm,
is.
mm,
And so I walked into the office quite arrogantly. I'd gone to school in Boston, so I did tell
mhm.
you that. So they teach arrogance 101 up there. And
Okay, that's okay. So that comes by naturally for Bostonians. What's
yeah,
a
yeah,
Boston
yeah.
Bostonite?
Bostonians, they're a little
Okay.
cocky. So I walked into the office. I applied for a job. And so the guy says to me, he says, listen, you know, we don't really have any openings or anything. I said, well, I'm going to tell you truthfully, you're not going to find another candidate like me probably for another 15, 20 years. You need to really find a place for me because I'm
Right.
going to change how your company, right? So I'm talking to them just like this.
Right.
I believe this. I'm not saying this out
Yes.
of nonsense. I believe this, right?
Right.
I am the person that you've been looking for. You haven't been able to find, and just
Mm,
so happens I'm available. So
right.
now would be a good
You
time. So he
right.
got
You got lucky.
yeah, no, he got tickled, right? And So, just remember it's going to be a person that gives you your next job. And what that person's impression of you is going to be, will I give this person an opportunity or not? Because you're just breaking in. You don't have no whole bunch of resume behind you, all this great work you've done. No, they're going to take a chance on you. So
Right.
I convinced him based on my attitude. And so, his thing, yeah, I said, listen, I want to get in research and development. And, I'm an engineering student. I'm really, and he's like, yeah, okay, kid, right. So he calls up his buddy, right? He says, "Hey,
Hmm.
Dave," he says, "Dave, I got this kid in my office, and I'm gonna send him by to see you. He looks like he's full of fire. He wants to get in the
Mm.
game. So I'm gonna send him by." And so I went by Dave's office that next week, Monday, and he says, "Kevin, we talked nothing about the job, nothing. We just talked about he just got to know me as a person. This is the
Yes.
key thing, right? Got to know me as a person. I got to know him as a person. So at the end, he says, when you want to start? I said, I start today.
Hmm.
Let's go. I'm ready. What do you mean? He's like, no,
Yeah.
no, no. He says, you're going to start as a tape librarian next week. And then I said, tape librarian? Dave, you must have made a mistake. I'm here for
Hmm.
a management job
Uh,
in research and development.
yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
He's like, oh man, yeah. He said, listen, you'll get there. Don't worry about it, Kevin. I see that in you, right? So he's talking to me like a mentor, like a coach, right? So, but I didn't recognize any of those things then, right? But I know it now. I know these people took me under their wing, so to speak, because they could see that I was motivated. I wanted something and I was
Yes.
willing to put in the work. This is key. I mean, if you look like you're just nonchalant, well, yeah, whatever, no, that's not what they're looking for. That's not what
Right.
I'm looking for. Uh,
Sure.
we say we say we're looking for people that bring their own rocket fuel. I got the launch pad, I got the rocket, but Jack, you got to bring your own rocket fuel. If you ain't ready to,
Right.
really put the booster in, there's not much I can do for you.
Yes. So walk me through then the steps to moving up through those ranks. Give us a little bit more of that backstory and some of the challenges you might have navigated or some of the potholes on the road as you went on that journey because you've done it well and you've landed at a good spot where you're now giving back. I think this is a great example.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a number of factors that go into it. I think number one is your mindset,
Mm,
and particularly when I entered into it, there was nobody that looked like me. I didn't have any role models in my family or my friends that had done
sure.
it before, so I had
Sure.
nothing to model it with.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
I,
and we all know you can't ask directions from people who haven't been where you're going. Right.
right,
That's one of
right.
the big mistakes I see entrepreneurs making all the time is you're asking people for directions. They never been there. They mean well, right? But
Not a good idea though.
no, it's not a good idea. Yeah. So okay, I love that. Keep unpacking it.
So now I go to I sit down and I start looking, who can I model, right? And so there are a lot of people that don't look like me and they don't necessarily like me. It's pretty hostile work environment. I tell people all the time, this ain't for everybody, right?
Hmm.
We're trying to change that narrative and that culture, and I see it changing in many companies.
Sure.
So, but when I entered, it was very hostile work environment. I mean, nobody's going to invite you. They're going to really treat you bad. So you had to develop some thick skin.
Wow.
And I use what I call the Columbo method. I ask the
Okay.
dumb question. I don't know if you ever watched Columbo, but he's
No.
really masterful at asking these questions. And what ends up happening is it seems like a dumb question. So people get really annoyed at him. They give him a lot more information than they really wanted to. And all of
Hmm.
a sudden, now I'm in possession of the information that I need to be successful. So I'm
Mm.
okay with asking the stupid question. And people
Right.
really getting nasty with me about because I'm taking it in. I'm just, so you got to have thick skin. Don't get
Yeah.
emotional. Take the information. You know who this is going to benefit? Me.
Right.
So,
Right.
and that's what I did. And my mom taught me early on, said, look, the one thing they can never take from you is what you have up here. And
Mm.
that I took very seriously.
Wow. So you're acquiring this knowledge, you're moving up the ranks. What did that process look like moving up? How did you end up doing that?
So, I won't negate to say situational awareness is key.
Hmm.
So one of the things, my jobs as an operator, I moved up the ranks in from tape library into operations. So Let me tell
Mm.
you, starting the tape library, I sit there for like 4 hours a night. Nobody says anything. Doesn't really start up until about 4 hours into my shift. But
Yeah.
there's all these manuals down there. And so I sit there for 4 hours. But yeah, I start reading the manuals.
Wow.
So when the first time they give me an opportunity to go up to operations, the guy says, "All right, I'm going to start teaching you how to do this." I got it, doc. Right? I know the commands. I know what's going on
Wow.
because they can't take what's up here. So now I start to excel in that area. And what ends up happening is in the operations area, you print the checks for the entire company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd volunteer for that job because you got to do a spot check to make sure the checks are right and lined up and they're not printing on the wrong check and all of that. But you have access to the report. Literally everybody in the company, from the president to my
Wow.
boss to my peers, I knew what everybody made.
Wow. So you're getting to understand the business a bit. Wow.
Situational awareness. And then
Yeah.
from there, you can set goals for yourself, realistic goals. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a mentor that could come and tell me what realistic goals I could have for myself. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to sort of do some espionage in order to find out things that my counterparts really didn't want me to know,
Wow.
i.e., everybody was being, and this is the same stuff we read in the newspapers. Everybody on my team that's white was being paid more than me. I was getting earning like 60 cents on the dollar kind of thing. And
Wow.
yeah, so I mean, it became obvious I need to do something about that.
Hmm. So what
So
did you do?
well, my wife laughs at me. I used to wear like holy shoes, not, no kidding. I go to one on one with my boss. I'd wear holy shoes. I'd put it up, and I tell him, hey, I got two kids. I got to, this thing ain't working for me. How do I get to the next raise? And
Yeah.
I don't ever leave their office without finding out what's the next level. What is
Right.
the next level, and how do I get there? And a lot of times they leave you with this mysterious talk, and I just will not accept it. I say there
Mm-hmm.
is a path.
Practicals. Right.
Yeah, there is a path, and I need to know what that is. And if you're not willing to tell me, I'm going to go elsewhere. I make it very clear that I'm not going to leave this to mystery. There is a you are successful, and it is my intention to be successful as well, right? And
Mm,
that's nothing to be embarrassed about. I think that should be
right.
upfront on the table at all times.
Right. I think that ambition really comes through. I remember I was watching the talk with Floyd Mayweather, and people would ask him, like, "Hey, Floyd, do you want to fly on my jet?" He's like, "No, not unless you're going to show me how you got it."
Right. That's exactly right.
He no, he's like, "I'm not interested in flying on jets. I'm interested." And he's like, "And whatever anybody's on here, you don't have to have an ambition for a jet. The whole point is that he's like, no, no, I don't even want to fly on it unless you're going to sit down and show me how did you get the jet."
Yes.
Like, I don't.
Goal
I'm not
oriented.
interested in right.
Yeah.
I
If
think
you don't
that's
have a goal,
huge.
anything will do.
Right, right. What's the one in Alice in Wonderland? The Cheshire Cat asks Alice when she gets there, "Where are you going?" She says, "I don't know." And he goes, "Okay, well then any path will do." She asks him, which way should I go?"
Yeah.
Like any path will do.
That
You
yeah,
know?
doesn't matter.
Yeah. So okay, so what was your ambition? What was really the thing that on the hard days was keeping you going, keeping you moving forward? How was that motivation? Where did
Yeah,
that come from?
and I think this talks to dreams, right? So me and my
Yes.
wife, we married early, young, and we had dreams of what our children would have, what we would be able to provide for them in terms of schooling and places to live and safety. And
Yes.
I grew up in New York, so all these things are top of mind for me. And how do you actually bring that to realization? How do you manifest that in reality?
Mm,
So I took some risks, and we developed a pretty high risk tolerance. I moved to Connecticut when nobody else wanted to move to Connecticut, and we bought a house. Didn't I was 23 years old. Bought my first house.
wow.
What what do I know about taking care of a house, buying a house? We stood in a gentleman's in the bank officer's uh, uh, office, and he told us, "No, you don't qualify." And my wife
Mhm,
was so enraged. She said, "Nope, we're not leaving this bank until they tell us yes." And so we went and sat in the president's office until the
mhm,
president came out, and we said, "Explain to us exactly why we don't qualify. We
mhm,
have the money, we have the means, we have." and we got the loan. So those sorts of
Wow.
things, you have a dream you just will not let go of. Those
Mm,
are things that are really important. Your why matters. If you don't have a why, yeah, any road will do.
wow. And it feels like persistence and determination were key parts of your story, right? Like you just refused to take no for an answer, even if it might have been a no in the short term. You're trying to, okay, all right, next way, next path. Talk about the role of persistence and determination on your journey, because I think there are a lot of listeners who can really resonate with, doors being slammed in their face over and over and over.
Yeah, that's that tough skin I was talking about. So, who does it matter to is really the way I process it. This doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter to them. So they can tell me anything. They can talk about me. The truth is, I don't have to go home with them. I'm not going to be living with them. And so my internal process is if this matters to me, I need to
Mm-hmm.
get on top of my game. And I need to know that I gave it my all. That when I, it does, if it doesn't happen, and I rarely believe it won't happen. But if by chance it doesn't happen, it won't be for lack of effort from me.
Sure.
And that's really, I mean, it has to be very, you think about things like the Great Depression, right? People were standing
Mm-hmm.
in soup lines that had nothing to do with their ability, their performance, right? So there are things that happen to you in life that are beyond your control, and you just have
Sure.
to be able to accept that. But how many of those things? Not many. There's not many.
Hmm. Right. And so it's literally just about putting one foot in front of the other and making it happen. All right. So then you went from IBM to Microsoft, and then you retired from there and started your own company. Talk deeply about the work that you're doing at our Triad now, because I think, and also what made you come out of retirement to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because you could have, kicked your feet up and done your thing. So clearly there's still a passion, there's still a drive to do something bigger and something more. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so I reached a point at Microsoft where I realized I had probably outgrown my ability to contribute. And we
Sure.
were going in two different ways. They were asking at the very top leadership. Satya Nadella gave a book out from Dr. Carol Dweck called Growth Mindset. I
Hmm.
internalized that book. It took me a while. I didn't buy into it at first, but eventually I bought into what the principles were. I went to my management. I pitched them on some things that I needed in order to grow myself and
Hmm.
really thrive because at this point I was getting on planes 2 and 3 times a week.
Wow.
That wasn't exactly what I was looking to do, and I'd done that for 5 years. So I said, let
Hmm.
me take on a more leadership role, build teams. And they disagreed with that. So I said, you know what, I can do that on my own. So I retired to come out and do exactly that work. I declared we're building a cloud army, and what I
Mm.
mean by that is when I went around the country helping them deploy cloud in large enterprises, there were many people I met that were in IT already, had no idea what was going to happen next, whether they
Mm.
were even have their jobs, whether, no one was preparing them for what was coming. And I knew the magnitude of what was coming. I literally saw
Sure.
it from the inside out. So what I was telling them is, get ready. If you're in IT or you want to be in IT, you're going to have to know something about cloud, or you will not be very valued in IT.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm. Yeah, you'll lose some relevance.
yeah, you can be a desktop first person or a help desk person, but you're not going to get to the big bucks. You're not going to get to the exciting jobs. So
Hmm.
your mind's got to get right about that. So, like I
Sure.
said, that mindset precedes culture. They say attitude and mindset are the key things, and I believe that very strongly.
Mm. So you came out and talk about the work that you're doing now, because I think it's really impactful and making a really big difference. Talk about what you're really doing with our triad.
Yeah, so since I got, from the time when I was working with IBM, they used to call it the digital divide.
Hmm.
I see it as opportunity. I grew up as, relatively poor kid in New York, and I've had an extraordinary career, opportunities to travel the world, see different things that I quite frankly had never even thought, dreamed I'd see.
Hmm.
When my kids were 3 and 4 years old, they were walking through multi-million-dollar data centers, looking at computers. So exposure
Wow.
is really key, right? And so when I came out, I decided, What I really wanted to do to create the difference in our community's ability to be successful was to give them exposure. And what do I mean
Mm,
by that? Let me give you an example. So I grew up in the late 1970s. I don't know how many of you have seen The Get Down. That's where I grew up, right? So you see uh, the music programs being cut, cities burning, people are out of work. It's really horrific
mm,
circumstances. But my mindset is not this. We're plugging in to the bottom of street lamps and having block parties, right?
mhm,
Got people like African Bambaataa building the Zulu nation. Like, let's stop war, gang war violence, and let's come together as a people and show you how creative we are and have dance
mm.
and DJ battles, and all of a sudden you
Wow.
start to have a different energy, and the flow in a place like that will entirely change who you are. And so Africa Bambaata's thing was knowledge of self. Do you know who you
Mm,
actually are? Do you know
mhm.
what you're walking with? What kind of power? What kind of influence? What kind of creativity that is coming out of you?
Wow.
And no matter how far they push you down, they can't kill that. So
Right.
I grew up in that. So that's kind of where my attitude comes from. So I said I
Yeah.
look at tech, and they saying there's a skills gap. Me and my partner Clyde, we talk about it all the time. It's not a skills gap; it's an opportunity gap.
Mm.
Going to give you your next opportunity. Who's going to invest in you to make sure you're prepared for that opportunity? And so those are the problems we work on, and the problems we're looking to solve in our business.
Right. So what are you doing about it? What are you doing about the opportunity gap? What does that look like, boots on the ground?
Yeah, it's a number of things. So, one of the things I told you about, I didn't get my college degree. I got a big bill though. I got a huge bill from my Boston University. So, knowing that story, knowing that education's a business and that
Mhm.
not necessarily focused on outcomes, particularly about us. HBCUs do a really great job at making sure you complete it. So, several of my children have gone to HBCUs, and I think that
Mhm.
that's an emphasis, right? I also did a lot of mentoring of college hires when I was at my saw people coming out of that structured environment into a
Mm.
highly unstructured environment where they throw you in and say, hey, there's a lot of smart people. Here's the problem. Go solve it.
Right.
And they were lost.
Right. Because
But
it's not like deliver this and do this. Right.
no, it's not structured at all. So all of a sudden, what happened is I see, oh, okay, the culture matters. What culture you come out and your preparation for that culture matters.
Mm.
So, if I'm sitting you in a classroom and the teacher is lecturing you and they're acting like they're the authority and they know what it is, and then I put you in an environment where your boss is a facilitator, he just says,
Mm.
look, I need you to go tell me what the right thing to do is.
Mhm.
That's a pretty dramatic shift in role.
Huge. Huge.
So they feel that, and every human being would feel that, right? So
Yeah.
you prepare them for the environment they're walking into. Now I'm going to add on top of that, being a black or a female walking into that environment, it's hostile. You don't even have a voice. You sit down and you say something intelligent, and nobody responds to you.
Mm.
Then all of a sudden you're going like, I am speaking English.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and
Right.
and then you wait till the end of the meeting, and then somebody else says exactly the same thing, and then everybody's like, "Yeah, that's what we should do."
You got it, Bob. Right. No offense to any Bobs out
Yeah,
there.
but this is real. This is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to get your mind ready for that, and understand. Okay, given all of that, because here's the thing. If and I tell my mentees this all the time, don't show up for a football game in a basketball uniform. Know what game you're getting signed up for. Know what you're playing.
Sure.
Know how to play the game. Know what success looks like for you. Doesn't
Mm.
matter what it looks like for them. So that's how I got here. Practically, what
Yes.
we started doing is saying, look, don't go to college and get a big bill. Scaffold your career. Get some knowledge,
Okay.
get some money, get some more knowledge, get some
Yep. Yep.
more knowledge, get some more money, and
Yep.
do that through pre-apprenticeship. If you're trying to enter into the field, we combine not only skills knowledge, we give you knowledge. We use CompTIA as IT fundamental certification. give you knowledge of the industry, the roles, what actually is IT, how broad is it,
Sure.
how complex, give you a little flavor, visibility into what's
Sure.
going on in the industry. We
Right.
give,
But actually understanding the environment, which I think is way bigger than just the knowledge, right? Like the knowledge can be acquired, but understanding how to move in that jungle, in that space, I think is everything.
so the difference between reading the book or just going online and taking IT fundamentals from CompTIA and
Yeah.
taking it with us is you're going to be exposed to some of the highest level professionals in the business. So you're
Wow.
going to get a touch with people and interaction with people regularly that have lived it. So that colorization of what the environment is, what
Mm,
sort of things you need to actually do if that's your interest. Here's
yeah.
some people you can connect to. So being in that learning and career development is a key factor.
Mm. What do you mean by career development? Break that down for us a little bit.
So it starts with you, number one. And so we do take you through some training about you. It's called life design. What would I do with my life? Or
Mm,
what could I do with my life? So what are my strengths? What are my talents? What are my experiences that I bring to things that are unique?
mm.
I remember my interaction with IBM early on.
Yeah.
I came in, I talked about what I bring to the table. Make it clear and know it for yourself. Don't,
Yes.
if I come in there wishy washy about it, yeah, I'm really smart. I can learn things really fast. Tell me the last time you learned something really fast.
Right.
Well, last week I was, you better have a
Yeah.
story, right? You better support
Yes.
that. So that's what we teach people. What's really you, your authentic self, as they call it. So
Mm,
it's a big term nowadays, and people need to know what that really means. So bring your authentic self. Then we take you through the IT fundamentals, show you, and then we have you through that whole period of time work in the environment, working in teams,
mm.
make sure you're working with your peers, because this building of social capital is the key.
Right.
With experts, learning who they are, what their experiences have been, working with mentors, people that can help you see. And we talk about having a career plan. So the mentor helps you
Hmm.
develop a career plan. They help you see what gaps you have in that scaffolding. All right, here's the gaps to the next level. Fill these gaps, and you're ready
Hmm.
for the next level. And then coaching. Who's going to get me there to fill those gaps? Because there are days when you're ready to just throw in the towel.
Sure.
So
Right. Well, and coaching collapses timelines, right? It's not just you out there by yourself trying to work it, right? Coaching, I think, when you have a good coach, will collapse a timeline. Like you can even see, I'm watching Jason Tatum in the finals right now, and I'm not a fan either way, but there's a lot of people like, oh, you can tell he worked with Kobe, right?
yeah,
There's something that happens, and he's young, making these big moves, but the mindset, whatever Kobe had that rubbed off on him, it's like, oh, you can tell that he's been around Kobe, this coach. I really think a good coach collapses timelines in a really significant way.
i.e. our
What do you
relationship,
think?
Justin. Our relationship is exactly that, right? You
There you
hold me
go.
accountable to the things we talk about in our sessions. And
Right.
so everybody needs to understand. I didn't even have exposure to those things early in my career, but now that I have
Yes.
exposure to them, I understand what a value they are and how
Yes.
having people, you don't necessarily have to know a lot about tech, although you do, but you ask questions that are deeper about my business and how
Yes.
I'm thinking about and approaching my business, things that are not naturally questions that arise in my own mind. So if
Hmm.
you don't have that perspective and getting different people's perspective on your situation
Yes.
is what we offer in that community. So you think about how great is the community going to be? As large as the number of people that grow in it. So that's
Hmm.
how we think about the community. Okay, we talk about it like it's full blown, but we know it's going to transform the more people that get in it, the more
Yes,
people that
and
bring
even the
their,
more people co-create it, right?
yes,
Because you now have these
exactly.
people adding their brilliance to the community. I think to me that's the power of community. It's not just a gathering of people, but it's this exponential thing that happens when people come together. I believe that when people come together, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. I think it's 1 + 1 = 10. Like
Yeah,
there is this
yeah,
multiplication that happens when like-hearted, like-minded people come together to achieve a common purpose. It's way beyond the sum of the parts,
It's
right?
synergy,
And
synergy.
yes,
And
that's
I'll
it.
tell you, in Microsoft, I used to, you go around and you talk to people about your brand, right? My brand was
Hmm.
repeatable excellence. How do you go to the championship back to back?
Right.
And you got to create synergy.
Yeah.
It's not just talent, right? Because
Hmm.
when you win the championship, okay, maybe that was talent. But the
Sure.
next year, everybody else is getting up for the game with you because you're the former champs.
Right.
So
Right.
that ain't just talent, right? Then you got to get into mindset, you got to get into chemistry, you got to get into a lot of different levels. Um,
Mm,
so that to me is critical when you're looking at how do I continue to grow, because that's
mm.
repeatable excellence. What we did
Yes.
last year to grow is not necessarily what we're going to have to do this year to grow,
Sure.
and
Sure.
you got to be purely awake to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, this is really resonating. And I'm loving your approach to education. And, to me, this is what I think education at its best looks like, which is immersive and really preparing people for real scenarios and allowing people to grow and try and fail and do all of these things. I've been really studying a lot about just the education system lately, and it works for very few people,
yes.
right? Like when people say, "Oh, like is it working?" No, it works for very few people because you're putting, kids through, sit them down and make them comply, and again, this is not every.
Justin,
And
we
I
got to
know
do
some
another 2 shows on that.
trust,
I got a nonprofit called Ed Revolution. That's we need to talk about that though, because really,
but you're doing it now in
yeah,
these ways, even just in your approach, right? I think it's so much bigger, right? And really what you're doing is you're training people to be worker bees, right? And like, okay, follow instructions that, and studying some of the origins recently about how
yeah.
it's really like a lot of the education system was born out of the industrial revolution,
Well,
which
it's
was
indoctrination. Yeah, it's indoctrination versus education. So there's a very small thing that we change in that is
mm-hmm,
education is okay as long as the goals of the student.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Let's not make it meet the goals of the industry and all of that. Let's meet the goals of the student. So that's why we start with life design first. In every
yes,
delivery we do, we start with life design. And that's
that's
really
exactly it.
and it's been proving, we're getting the data now to prove that it makes the difference in the
Yeah,
outcomes. Because I know this is not, remember I told you when I get really worn out, I got to know this matters for me. It doesn't
yes.
matter what it means to the company, what it means to my boss. If it doesn't matter for me, I'm not going to work this hard.
Right. And when a lot of the people that we say, oh, this is students lazy. No, they're not lazy. They just don't care about this thing, or you haven't made it matter to them,
That's
right?
right.
A lot of the questions that I get when I'm working with young people is like, well, why do I need to know trigonometry, da da da, if I'm really trying to do this? And my answer is like, you kind of don't, you know, So they're like, why should I care about this? And but then I'll tell them, well, you should care about it because you go and do this and you get this piece of paper and it's gonna stack it up this way. And they're like, oh, okay. For me, I was an incredible student once I had something to care about. And it wasn't until like halfway through 12th grade that I was like, oh, shoot, if I'm going to have the impact that I want to have and da da da, I got to get okay, well, if I'm going to do that, then I need to. And all of a sudden, I went beast mode in school, not because I gave a shit about school, but because I gave a shit about what I was trying to do.
There you
And so
go.
now all of a sudden, school had a purpose.
And that's what mentors allow you to see, right? That dialogue with mentors start to unfold things that are blind spots for you. Then the coach helps you drive towards those goals. So it's not complex. It's pretty simple, but it's
Mm,
not easy either.
sure.
It's
Well,
really
and
hard.
it's upside down compared to the current paradigm too, right? Is you're
Yeah.
doing things that I think are far more natural, if you
Yeah.
will. Like I
Yeah.
think this is far more natural. I was reading about like the root word of education, educo in Latin, actually means to educe,
Yes.
right? To draw out. Yet, so much of our education system is we're trying to put things in. right?
Yeah,
We're trying to no,
right.
I'm the pro and I'm going to put knowledge in you because
Wrong.
you're an
Yeah,
empty vessel, you're dumb and you need to be filled.
yeah.
Whereas education is actually how can I educe the genius that's already
That's
within you,
already in you. That's it. That
right?
you hit it dead on the head.
And nurture that, right? And I think
And
that's your approach.
give opportunity to that.
Yes.
That is what's missing. And
Yes.
if you subject people in groups in large numbers to the opposite of that for a long period of time, it becomes toxic. It's like
Of
suffocating
course.
you. Your
Right. And
body.
then you're trying to undo this by the time the kids get out of this system and even through university, which is kind of same thing. It's like, okay, well, you're going through these 4 years. What are you actually getting out of it for this expensive piece of paper? But like, and then you have to try to undo that, unlearn, right? A lot of these pieces. And I'm sure you see that a lot in your work.
Well, and again, I grew up at the birth of hip hop. Hip hop gives a black eye about a lot of things, a lot of
Mm,
messaging, a lot of values, things. But I
yes.
can tell you for sure, one of the things that really drove me from hip hop and the hip hop culture was knowledge of self and
Mm,
understanding that nobody defines my destiny but me. I
yes.
admire that in rappers. I admire that they didn't take anybody else's definition of who they were. They began to self-define, and we call it
Mm,
self-actualization. And you can look that up.
yes.
Self-actualization is a
Yes.
very powerful concept. Uh, Dream realization. I'm an addict. I'm addicted to dream realization. How do you do that, right? And I'm a man of faith, so there's very strong ties to my faith and how my
Yes.
dreams get realized. So I think everybody has that. I believe
Mm,
that to my core, that you have the ability to realize any dream that you
yes.
have, that because it was given to you,
Yes.
believe that it's real. It's not
Yes.
some nonsense. It's not some fantasy. But what are you doing about it? That really is the question. And that's what we get at. We start saying, okay, let's ask the questions. What's in you? You start explaining it. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Then
Mm,
we make each other accountable. That's it.
right. And how can we help? Come
That's education.
alongside.
That's education. And
That's education.
that's education.
Man, that is it. I love this so much. I love what you're doing. So now, for our listeners who are here, let's get really practical, really granular here as we close this piece out. We have listeners who are wanting to break into tech, who are saying, "Hey, like, where do I even start? How do I start thinking about it?" I know you talked about, understanding what's within you, maybe as the first step. Like, give us a little bit of a step by step. If this is all they watch and the only interaction that they get with you, you're going to make a difference in somebody's life by saying this. So
Yeah.
how do they move from where they are to where they want to go specifically in a tech centric path?
Yeah. So let's be really clear. And I redefined what I consider an expert because the environment that we're living in today, everything is changing at such a rapid pace.
Mm,
I can tell college students entering into Microsoft, you're as valuable or even more valuable than the people that have 20 years because what comes out tomorrow, everybody has to learn at the same rate, no matter
hmm.
how long you've been here.
Sure.
And he who learns that and can apply that the fastest wins. You are the expert de
Yes.
facto. So
Right.
I redefine expert: someone who can learn,
Mm,
someone can apply what they learn, and minimize the impact of their mistakes because you're going to make mistakes. So you have to internalize the fact that as human beings, we're embarrassed by making mistakes. We really shy
hmm.
away. That's what that growth mindset is. Fail fast, fail often. You're going to be the
Yeah.
fastest learner because as Einstein had said once upon a time, the man who knows every way to fail is the expert.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you know every way to fail,
Hmm.
you know every way to succeed. So
That's good.
yeah, that really starts the whole thing off. And so that's why I talk about mindset a lot. The next piece is opportunity. Who's going to give me the opportunity? We talked a little bit about this in the start of my career. And I think you got to
Hmm.
bring your authentic self there and you got to give the energy that is due you. If you think you're due that energy that you represent yourself, nobody else is going to love you if you don't love you. So you need to
Right.
show up like
Thanks.
I love me. I love what I'm doing. I love how I show up. I love what I bring to this equation, and you're missing it. So I tell
Hmm.
everybody in our pre-apprentice program, they're looking for you. They haven't found you yet. That, you got to get that internalized. Man,
Yes.
they've been looking for me. They're saying it on the news. They can't find the talent. I'm out here.
Right. I'm the talent.
I am that talent, right? So you
Wow.
get that. You got it. Now the opportunity shows up. Are you prepared? And so that's what we start to say, okay, what are you doing today, tomorrow? And so the things we talk about is certification as the identification that I'm moving towards the goal, that I have an interest, have a portfolio that demonstrates the work I'm doing in this area to demonstrate my interest. Don't go in there and say, man, I'm passionate about technology. I say, okay, well, show me something that you've done in technology that demonstrates that.
I was like, okay.
Well,
At least have made a YouTube video or something.
right. I watch these webcasts. No, that's not passionate. That's not
Right.
passionate. Right? Show me the evidence. So one of the
What have
books
you
I
tried to build? What have you, right? I think you got to get your, in the garage. Like you got to be tinkering and doing and trying to make something. And I think even for non-tech backgrounded people, there are a lot of ways right now that you can start tinkering where you don't have to know how to code. You don't have to, you can start putting already established software together in a way that stacks into a product, right? Like there is a ton of different ways. And I'm talking a little bit of jargon, but let's break it down really easily. Shopify, a Shopify store is an e-commerce store that you can start without having any background and do it. Like there are ways to
easier than ever.
start developing. Right. And plug in some apps that work. Google, like, how do I integrate this with that? And I'm speaking from experience, like a
Yes,
non-tech backgrounded person who's like, okay, I want something that does this. How can I put it together? And you just find a way to, like, all right,
now,
you do it.
last piece of what you're saying, don't suffer in isolation. And that's so we have a
Hmm.
meetup, we call it the IT certification hump meeting. So
Yeah.
don't suffer in isolation. Let's build a community. Let's talk about what the hurdles are. Let's find
Yes.
out and help each other, right? And nurture each other,
Hmm.
share resources, share information, share experiences. So
Huge.
this is really where the community piece comes in. So our mission and vision is all about, we say we're trying to empower people in organizations, right, and communities with technology. So
Hmm.
we're using the technology, but we're empowering people. That's
Right.
at the center of
That's
what
the real work.
that's
You're
the
you're a transformation. You're a transformation company disguised as a tech company. It's a front.
you hit me. You hit me.
You know.
That's my word. So you got to boil down who you are into one word: transformation. That's what I'm about. Yeah, you hit me.
There you go. I
Wow,
see you all day.
what red hand.
Yeah, I see you all day. Yeah, this is a front, man. You're really dealing transformation in the back room.
That's
That's
right.
um that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to touch on one piece that you mentioned because you've mentioned it a few times and it keeps catching my ear, so I feel like you have something to say about it. You keep coming back to who is going to give me that opportunity. Who? And I think we forget often how much of life is driven by relationships and who you know. As far advanced as we get in technology and AI and whatever, I think it still comes down to the power of relationships. Break that down for us and talk about how does someone even begin connecting with a potential person who might have a lead somewhere in, right? How do you even begin that process? Because people are like, I know people listening are like, hey, I don't have those relationships. I don't know who these people are. Well,
That's
you
right.
do. It might be 2-3 degrees of separation, right? But break that down for us. Why is the who important? And how do you even start connecting human to human with shoulder to shoulder with some of the people that you're really trying to reach out to? Because that can feel intimidating as well.
Yes, definitely. Number one is have a LinkedIn account. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
be able to express who you are on LinkedIn and be able to search for other people with talents and skills. I talked about those gaps. Once you
Mm.
identify a gap, who could I find and know to fill that gap? We're in a unique place, and this is one of the things I saw at Microsoft and other companies that
Mm.
people don't realize now. You've got more black leadership, you got more black decision makers in corporate America today than we've ever had. We've got more black entrepreneurs starting startups. We've got more black
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs creating growth. industries
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than
Mm-hmm.
ever before, right? Who
Sure.
are Ask them for a job. They need help. I'm one of them.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So this is what we need to see. There's two sides of this equation, and
Mm.
then where do they show up? So I'm a big proponent of, I'm not the real networker. I'm not the guy who goes out to these parties and is just a social butterfly. I go and I network with a purpose. I go to these meetings. I'm going to meet somebody that's going to blank, 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 right? And I go to that meeting and then I can talk
Mm-hmm.
to people very focused, very determined. Hey, Justin, great to meet you. What do you do? Hey, oh, this is what I do. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Justin, you know what I'm looking for? Blah, 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 blah. He said, hey, you
Mm-hmm.
know who you need to talk to? Sally over there. She's all into that. Okay, Sally. Zoom. Right.
Right.
And then because this takes a lot of energy out of me. I'm an introvert by nature. So for me to
Me
go
too,
in
if you can believe it. Yeah.
I gotta be focused. I can't just
Yeah.
go in there like chilling and oh, this is natural to me. It's unnatural to me. So it really, when you say building relationships, and then the other side of that, I listen to a lot of Patrick Bet David.
Mm.
He talks about this thing about not being transactional, like creating a
Mm.
relationship that today doesn't have to be something that comes out of it from me. I
Right.
go into all of these interactions with, hey, Justin, how can I help you?
Right.
And when I do that, it opens up a lot of areas that weren't there before. If I go in there and say,
Yes.
hey, Justin, you know what you need to do? You need to buy this subscription from me, blah, blah, blah. And I just see you as a customer, it closes down all the other dimensions that Justin had.
Right.
And so I
Right.
stop doing that. I got to go. Now, it's great if you happen to say, hey, you know what I'm looking for is a subscription. Boom, I can jump right on that.
Right. There are times when that happens.
Right. But if we're just networking and I'm trying to understand, I believe strongly there's no coincidence. There's a reason
Mm-hmm.
I met Justin. So
Mm-hmm.
may not be for this year, could be 5 years from now. Patrick Bet David talks about the contact that you gave me that gave, 5 calls down the line was his $30 million deal, right? So
Wow.
right, it's the boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
6 degrees
Yeah.
of separation. So you got to
Yeah.
see that he talks about lens and language. He says, look, my
Yeah.
lens has got to go from this to this, and
Mm.
my language has to reflect that I'm open,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
to building a
Well, and I
relationship.
think even in the transaction that you talked about, the example of, hey, I need this subscription, and you just happen to have that subscription. I would argue that in that case, it still is relational,
Still,
and you are still looking to be a giver. It just so happens that what you're giving has a reciprocal value for you, right? I believe that all sales is still giving if you do it from the right place, because
yes,
you're saying, no, I am connecting you with value that you need, right? And that does something to feed me too. And I still think that's relational when it's done right. I still think it's not just a transaction when you're getting somebody like, I need water. Well, I have water. Here's some water. Here's some money. Here's some, right? Like,
thank you. Yeah,
right. That's a beautiful way to relationship, right? We're
yeah,
relating through something, right?
yes.
But it's still done right. Business done right is always relational,
And it meets
always
a need.
relational.
It meets a need. So I look at
There you go.
sales. Most people have this sales orientation, and I try to say, no, what I really do is I problem solve. I help people
Yeah.
solve a problem they're having, and we
Yeah.
reach agreement about what needs to be done to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
when I
Yeah.
look at the problem we're solving, and a lot of people, this is being broadcast, so I'm just going to say it out loud. A lot of this is about the IT industry's problem about how to solve their diversity problem.
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
I don't look at it like that at all. I look at it as our community's opportunity to solve our economic mobility problem,
There you go.
right? And it's just context, it's just lens, it's just how
Mm-hmm.
you see it. I know this thing has given me a great opportunity to change my lifestyle,
Sure.
to make sure that I could provide for my family, and that gives you a greater self confidence about what
Sure.
your options are. And I believe strongly in options to
Mm-hmm.
do and if impact the world in the way that you want to do that. Right. So
Right.
I think that is the thing I'm trying to give to our community. And it
Mm,
just so happens the IT industry is a vehicle that we can accomplish that with.
nailed it.
Yeah,
Nailed it. It's your vehicle. I love that. And I love how you frame that this isn't the just the tech industries, they're trying to solve their diversity problem. I also think in as you were saying that you are giving the power to a different person when you do that, right? You're
yeah,
saying like, no, 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 this is they got to go out, the theys of the world got to go out and solve this for me, which completely takes it out of my hands. That's a very powerless
powerless,
situation, right?
powerless.
Which is dependent type of situation versus no, tech is an opportunity for me to change my stars and my community stars, and I don't really care what they're doing out here because I'm not fighting for a seat at the table. I'm building tables. Like if I have to, I'll build one. Like that's the shift in mindset out here, and I think it ironically positions you to go and take some of these other opportunities with the powers that be, if you so choose as well. What are your thoughts on that?
So I've seen it happen. So I told you we were plugging uh, turntables into the lamp post. All
Hmm.
right. It's now a multi-billion-dollar business.
Wow.
It's there. The evidence is there. Look at it closely. Look at
Yes.
now. I will say there's some twists and turns in how it gets defined, how it gets capitalized, how it
Mm,
gets commercialized. But you see more and more leaders in hip hop now in determining their own destiny about how it gets
hmm.
commercialized than ever before because we're maturing. And that
Yeah.
mindset as an entrepreneur, and you look at the Jay-Z's and you look at the LeBron James and the Shaquille O'Neals, and you
Hmm.
understand that they now understand the business side of this.
Yes.
That is, study those people, study 50
Yes.
Cent, see what
Hmm.
they've learned, because what's going on is not what you see on the video
Right. Right. At all.
at
At
all.
all.
They're never
Oh,
going to
the
show you
only,
the video of what's going on.
no, and only recently has Jay Z started really talking about some of like he's talking about okay, I'm buying art. That's he's like I took this piece, bought it for 5 million, now it's 10 million. But he's talking about like buying and selling, curating art, right? This is a far cry
Because
from
he's an artist.
drug
He
dealing and
understands.
da 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 that some hip hop talks about, right?
He's an artist. He understands it. It's his business. He knows art, right? Kanye knows art. Why? They're artists. People think, oh, he's just a hip hop. No, he's an artist. He understands the whole notion, the motion, the intention. He knows all the backstory. So
Yes.
we're looking at it as consumers, and this is what I dealt with my kids early on. I talk
Yes.
about talking, taking them through it 2 and 3 years old. I'm also producer, video producer. So
Hmm.
I got into those things and I showed them, look, there's a message that's being delivered here.
Right.
You got to decide whether you're just a consumer or you're a producer and a consumer. You can
Right.
don't be ashamed of consuming, but you need to be able to produce your own message in order to advance your own agenda.
Right. Become a creator.
You have to.
Right. Well, and I think, consumption is fine, but the ratios are way off. I think most
Ratio.
people are 95% consumption, 5% creation, but consumers don't get paid, creators get paid.
Yes.
And getting in the habit of creating, even on social platforms, right? Is okay, mindless scrolling on the thing. The scrolling is not the problem, it's the ratios. Like, how much are you creating versus consuming, right? And I think, you got to put that type of stuff, or if a video or something inspires you, go out and talk about it. Like, get in the habit, develop the muscle of creating in order to move forward, because creators are the ones that eat, like that's how it works over time. I know we're getting close to time here. What are the next steps, hopping off this video, the next steps that someone could take to eat, just move the needle? Like, what is the one next step? It can be big, it can be daunting. Coming off this video, is there anything that somebody can do to begin on that path or feel like they're making traction on this path towards getting into the tech industry?
Yeah. Number one is I'm a human being. I told you the next person that gives you your opportunity is a human being. My email is kevin@rtriad.com, rtriad.com. I talk to people every day.
Hmm.
We have a meetup once a week, every Wednesday. It's free to join. It's the
Yep.
IT certification hump meeting. Feel free to join that. We do a study group on Tuesdays for those who are trying to do Network Plus. Easy. Knowone.com, KNOWWON,
Yep.
knowone.com. That's our community where we're building, where you can get more information, and we're going to be driving that messaging very strongly. We've hired a marketing team to really rebrand that entire site. So what you see
Yep.
now and what you see tomorrow may be a little different, but just know that that is what we're invested in: learning
Yeah.
and career development. And by the way,
Yes.
this works throughout your career. So it's not just when you're trying to get into IT. Know that there are definitely some ceilings you're going to hit. And how do you break through those ceilings?
Mm.
Again, we've leaned a lot in my career. I've leaned a lot on mentoring, coaching, and really
Yes.
sponsors. Who's going to talk about you when you're not in the room?
That's it. That's it. That's it. I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. Make sure you connect with Kevin, Kevin at rtriad.com. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. I'm going to drop, I was trying to drop it in the chat, but the chat piece isn't working right now. So I'm going to make sure I drop it in the chat once we're off this live.
Nice.
Another resource that I've been thinking of, if you're specifically wanting to get into software as a service sales on that front, I got a great friend, Darren McKee, Darren and Eric are running the SaaS Bros, and they're literally just like, how do we put people on? How do we get people into the sales side, right? So you don't even have to necessarily know the tech. And I don't think either of them had a tech background coming into
That's
this. One was
key.
a nonprofit leader, and they're doing really great work. Like, how do we give people game? How do we put people on? So Darren and Eric McKee at SaaS Bros, I think SAAS bros.com. Anyway, somewhere around there, but find them. They're dope. I'll drop them in the chat too. Any other resources you can think of? All right. Did you have something that you wanted to chip in on that?
Yeah, so I could honestly say that that comment about not being technical and having career legs in IT industry is huge. So
Mm,
my area of expertise is around identity and access management. Look up identity and access management, governance, regulatory and compliance (GRC). These are all policy and audit type roles, non-technical, but
mm,
very well paying. So again, just understanding there are lots of roles, and that's one of the things we do. We want to make sure that it's exposure to lots of understanding. What I bring to the table doesn't have to be technical.
sure. I love it. I love it. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for making yourself available and sharing this wisdom and knowledge of self out into the world. I can just see all of um, the streams and connections of your journey coming together in fruition here as you continue the good work. So thank you for that.
Thank
Make
you.
sure everybody here, thank you. Stay connected, and thanks for spending this time with us. You could have been anywhere else, but you hopped on LinkedIn Live with Kevin and I today, and I could not be more grateful for everybody that's been a part of this journey so far. Kevin, keep it up and stay in touch as you go.
All right. Appreciate you. Take care.